Greetings to our audience. Now, here are the details. President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, arrived in Washington late on the 17th of last month for an important meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump, according to CNN. Upon setting foot in the U.S., President Zelensky expressed confidence that Ukraine would receive security commitments with the support of European leaders. "I have arrived in Washington. Tomorrow I will meet President Trump. Tomorrow I will also speak with European leaders. I am very honored to receive the invitation from the U.S. President," Zelensky wrote on social network X on the 17th. He affirmed, "We will share a strong desire to end the Russia-Ukraine conflict quickly and reliably, so peace must be lasting." According to the schedule, on the 18th, Zelensky would hold a bilateral meeting with President Trump in the Oval Office before Trump meets with European leaders. "I am confident that we will defend Ukraine, ensure effective security, and the people of Ukraine will always be grateful to President Trump, the American people, as well as the invaluable support from our partners and allies. Russia must end this conflict," Zelensky stressed. He also said, "New security guarantees must be stronger than those that failed in the past." At the same time, he recalled that the Crimean Peninsula, which belongs to Ukraine, was annexed by Russia back in 2024. "Ukrainians are fighting for territory, for independence," Zelensky affirmed, expressing hope that U.S. and European strength would force Russia toward genuine peace. Previously, President Trump had suggested that Ukraine should give up its claims over Crimea or abandon NATO membership in peace negotiations. On the 15th, Putin and Trump met at a Mendo-Richardson military base in Alaska. Their talks lasted about 3 hours, including private exchanges inside the U.S. president's limousine on the way to the main venue, as well as a later small group discussion with 3 members from each side. After the meeting, Putin stated, "The focus was on finding a solution to the Ukraine conflict. We discussed almost all aspects of cooperation, but above all, of course, we talked about a fair and viable solution for the Ukraine crisis," TASS quoted him. On the U.S. side, Trump described the summit with Putin as very effective but said no agreement had yet been reached on the war in Ukraine. Afterwards, the U.S. president held a phone call with President Zelensky, as well as the leaders of the UK, France, Germany, Italy, Finland, NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte, and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. U.S. media reported that in the nearly 2-hour call, Trump told Ukraine and Europe that Putin had clearly set out his territorial swap demands. Axios cited sources saying the Russian leader asked Ukraine to cede Donetsk and Luhansk in exchange for Moscow halting advances in Kherson and Zaporizhia. Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia are the 4 Donbas provinces in eastern Ukraine that Russia claimed to annex in September 2022. A Ukrainian source told Axios that Putin seemed willing to negotiate over smaller areas in Sumy and Kherson provinces, currently under Russian control. According to sources, Zelensky rejected this proposal, saying Putin misrepresented the frontline situation. Reuters cited sources saying Trump told Zelensky that Ukraine should reach an agreement with Russia to end the war. Trump also said he agreed with Putin that a peace settlement should be sought without an immediate ceasefire, which Ukraine and its European allies had demanded. "The best way to end the brutal war between Russia and Ukraine is to go straight to a peace deal to end the war, rather than just a ceasefire agreement, which is often hard to sustain," Trump wrote on his social network Truth Social. Axios reported on the 16th that Trump was expected to host a trilateral summit with Russia and Ukraine as early as the 22nd. After the call, Zelensky announced he would travel to Washington, D.C., to discuss the war with Trump. A White House official told CNN that many European leaders had been invited to attend the meeting between Trump and Zelensky in the Oval Office on the afternoon of the 18th U.S. time. The upcoming meeting will mark Zelensky's first visit to the White House since a heated Oval Office controversy earlier this year when Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance criticized the Ukrainian leader for not showing gratitude for U.S. aid. Observers hope Ukraine can avoid a repeat of such a scenario, according to the New York Times. After Trump briefed Zelensky on the key points of the U.S.-Russia summit, Ukraine now faces the urgent task of piecing together what the two leaders actually discussed, trying to decode whether they agreed on anything, and avoiding being sidelined in the peace process. A Ukrainian official familiar with the call told The Times that Zelensky's trip to Washington was meant to seek clarity from Trump, as Kyiv did not understand why the U.S. president suddenly abandoned the demand for a ceasefire before peace talks. In his statement after the call, Zelensky seemed cautious, avoiding open conflict with Trump, We need to achieve real and lasting peace, not just another pause between Russian attacks, he said. Trump's move toward a direct peace agreement could undermine weeks of intensive diplomacy in which Kyiv, backed by Europe, lobbied Washington to maintain its position that a ceasefire must come first and that Ukraine must not be disadvantaged in negotiations. Under this pressure, European leaders also chose to avoid confrontation with Trump. In private statements, they no longer repeated the demand for a ceasefire as before. On the 16th, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz told ZDF that a quick peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine might be more valuable than a ceasefire. If such a peace agreement succeeds, it is worth more than a ceasefire that may only last a few weeks without further political and diplomatic progress, he said. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer welcomed the openness of the US and Europe in providing firm security guarantees for Ukraine as part of an agreement. Starmer reaffirmed a determination to increase economic pressure on Russia until the war ends. Similarly, French President Emmanuel Macron praised the US's willingness to contribute, but stressed the need to maintain pressure on Russia. As long as the war continues, another disadvantage for Kyiv is that Russia entered talks with the US from a stronger position on the battlefield compared to Ukraine. According to the New York Times, Russian forces had breached Ukraine's defenses in the east, with Ukrainian officials warning Moscow had massed troops and equipment for new offensives. Recently, Russian forces broke through part of the Donbas front, advancing about 16 kilometers into Ukraine's rear and threatening to outflank Ukrainian positions. Ukraine declared Russia's offensive momentum appeared to have stalled, with some areas even pushed back. However, military analysts cautioned that this breach could still become a springboard for future Russian offensives aimed at seizing the rest of Donbas. Observers noted this was a stark contrast to Moscow's position over 3 years ago during the initial Istanbul peace talks, when Russian forces failed to seize Kyiv and were reeling under Ukrainian counterattacks. On the 16th, Andriy Zelensky's chief of staff thanked us First Lady Melania Trump for urging Russian President Vladimir Putin to protect children in the war zone. According to CNN, the return of Ukrainian children to their homeland must be considered an important condition in any peace agreement, Andriy wrote on social media. He expressed gratitude to Melania Trump for her letter to Putin, in which she called on him to restore the innocent laughter of children. Russia has not commented on these remarks. Earlier, during the Alaska meeting, Trump had personally handed Putin the First Lady's peace letter. Upon receiving it, Putin read the letter aloud in front of the U.S. and Russian delegations. U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin held an important summit in Anjosa, Alaska, on the 15th, focusing on ending the conflict in Ukraine. The two leaders met privately for nearly 3 hours, then made statements to the press without taking questions. In his opening remarks, unusually as the visiting leader, Putin said an agreement with the U.S. would pave the way toward peace in Ukraine. He emphasized that the Ukraine situation involved fundamental threats to Russia's security but admitted, "I agree with President Trump that Ukraine's security must also be ensured." He said Russia was ready to work toward a lasting solution by addressing the root causes of the conflict. On the U.S. side, Trump confirmed no final deal had been reached but noted some significant progress. "There is no agreement until there is truly an agreement," he said, adding he would soon call NATO and President Zelensky to brief them on the meeting. "Ultimately, the decision is theirs," he stressed. Trump described the summit as very effective and said both sides agreed on many points. He also considered Putin bringing Russian business executives to Alaska, a positive signal, but stressed no formal agreements would be signed until the Ukraine conflict is resolved. At the end of the press conference, Putin invited Trump to Moscow for the next round of talks. In response, Trump said the invitation put him under a bit of pressure but left open the possibility of attending. That concludes our program. Thank you for watching, and don't forget we provide updates throughout the day. Goodbye, and see you again.